Yo, what's good everybody? My name's Alckemy. Welcome to the channel. We have ourselves a cute little Syntakt here. And what I want to go through is how to get set up with Bitwig. I want to show you some quick routing options with Bitwig in case if you're really keen on using the hybrid setup with Overbridge. And then what I would like to do is show you some cool tricks that I found and give you a general approach to like how I would actually compose with this. So if you haven't seen it, I've already got a thing where I've already started composing a beat without talking and whatnot. That's kind of helpful. Or you can also check out Syntakt. You can check out Data Broth. And then I also need to give a shout out to Alburp for giving me some tips on how to get going with this thing. It was because of those three people that I figured this out in like 2 days, and maybe I just gelled with it, but it actually makes a lot of sense. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, of course you don't need a Syntakt, but if you already have one and you're like, yo, what is Alckemy doing with it? Here we go. Be sure to like the video and subscribe. All right. So the big thing within getting this up and running with Bitwig is that you need what's called the Overbridge Engine. You can download this off of their website. The reason why I wanted to bring this up in the first place was because I initially had the analog heat plus effects installed, and when I tried to figure out like what to do about installing the Syntakt, I didn't really know. What you have to do is you have to uninstall the Overbridge first, and then you have to reinstall it and then choose what boxes you own in order to be able to do that. I'm not going to walk through that with you right now. I don't really feel like it, but at the same time, if for whatever reason you've got your Syntakt and you've got another digital box pulled up and you have Overbridge installed and it's not showing up, then there's that. Very quickly, if you come into the Syntakt here, go into your settings just to make sure that we can make everything work. Go into your system and then go into USB config, make sure that Overbridge is turned on. If you just want to use this as a sequencer, you can also use USB MIDI. I haven't really found much success with USB audio and MIDI, but you can try that out if you want to. Okay, back to Bitwig for just a sec. With this, as you can see, when you pull this up, all you have to do is just pull up the Syntakt or like type it in the search function, Syntakt, and then you'll find that. And then it'll pull up. But by default, you'll notice that this is really quiet. So your unit's not broken. There's nothing wrong with whatever it is that's going on within your DAW and stuff. It's just that by default, I've noticed this with the analog heat as well, that the Overbridge electron boxes are very quiet. I think it's for gain stage reasons. So what I do is I just use a clipper or a limiter or something and just drive the input and maybe add a little bit of drive. And now everything is sounding so much better. The other thing to consider is that if you hit this guy right here, this little orange icon with the two things, you'll see that we can actually split these chains into different outputs. And this is nice because if we want to add effects to these individual chains, then we can just click on one and start adding effects. If you need more control, then you can add another audio track, and you can go into an audio receiver here and use an input source, find Syntakt, figure out which chain you want to add to this, and then let's say I want to do the kick, go 3/4 post, and now you'll see that this is feeding audio in case if you want to kind of like make everything bust out and apply effects individually that way. The other thing, this comes from Alburp, is that this amplitude is actually being sent out twice. So if we mute the main 1 and 2, we're still getting sound. So this is kind of doing like a double signal thing. So maybe what you might want to do is just mute 1, or if you want to just do everything as a whole, just solo 1 and 2, because it's going to be louder anyways. But yeah, that's just something to be mindful of. My suggestion would be to maybe just like build 12 tracks here and have these audio receivers here, and that way you've got up to 12 tracks being sent out, and then you can kind of start to combine everything, and that way that will put this together with both the sequencing and the audio and whatnot together. For whatever reason, if you're jumping into this and you hit tap tempo and this isn't working for you, don't fret. A lot of times this will kind of jump around via how this connects. You can always come into the Syntakt and kind of recalibrate this, which is something that when I was filming this video from before, I messed up, but I didn't talk about it, but I think I'm glad I caught it now. But you can set this to no sync, clock, and transport. So for whatever reason, if you want this to be something different and you want to change the tempo now, you'll see here that now I can do this. But the thing is that if I have this up and this is to clock plus transport, you're going to notice that if we come back to this here, sorry for the jump cuts, that I can't change it. So you might run into a little bit of wonkiness here, but that's why, in case if you're running into problems as such. So that does it for the Bitwig stuff. Now what I want to do is talk about basically the workflow and the approach to how I get into making stuff on this as a whole. And I think that because this is a Groovebox and because I'm somebody that really tries to cultivate my skill set in rhythm, this is a rhythm box and you can make some sick rhythms with it doing lots of cool stuff. Now, instead of thinking about like kick snare and then like melody and chords and stuff, I kind of want you to throw all that out the window if you're keen on trying this workflow anyways, and really focus on the groove. Shout out to Zane, shout out to Chi, shout out to Cage. Everything is about the groove, especially when it comes into something like halftime music. In order to record, we can pick a hi-hat or something and just plug in some values here and hit play, which sounds okay, but for me that's not good enough. So what I might want to do is start taking some of these notes and using the shift either left and right here in order to offset these notes to get my swing. If you didn't know, halftime is all about the swing. You can set these to different intervals and whatnot. You can also hold multiple things of this and shift everything at the same time, which is really nice. But now let's see what that sounds like. Which brings me to my next point, and when you're doing this stuff, I would recommend that you don't worry about the sound design initially. I would just try to utilize these tracks that you have to get somewhere kind of close. So obviously one track is going to be a kick. You're probably going to have a bass somewhere. You're probably going to have, maybe a melody or keys or something on that sense. And I would just try to really focus on placement as opposed to timbre. The reason why is because that's going to allow you to sketch faster, and then you can always go back and change stuff later, which we'll get into in a second. The other thing is that if you focus on making one pattern, one bar, this actually comes from advice from Copycat, like focus on making one particular sequence as dope as possible, because then what's going to happen is when you're ready to expand, we're going to hold function and go page and hit this again to 64. This is actually going to copy the pattern all the way across these 4 pages, I guess that would be called. So if we go to the sequencer here again, I'm going to hold 4. You'll see that this is kind of where it's at, and then I'll hit page 2, page 3, page 4. The reason why this is different is because when I first had this unexpanded, this isn't a brand new project, but if I were to try that again, what it would do, sorry about that, is it would copy the same exact pattern from page 1 all the way to page 4. And I guess it only does that the very first time. But since we're on that note, if you do want to copy a page, then what you can do is go hold page, go copy, then hit the next page and go paste. This also works for steps. It also works for parameter locking. What parameter locking is, very quickly, is if I am holding this and I change any of the sound design parameters here, then I can go into synth and be like, all right, I want this one to be different. We're gonna have some different decay, maybe have that go out. And then if I hold this one, you'll see that there's different settings for this. And what's really cool is that not only can we do this for the sound design engine, but if we're holding a step and we go and use the encoder, we can actually change the sound completely once we have stuff into what's called the sound pool. Now, I wanted to clear up some confusion about that because that was something I had a hard time looking up. The sound pool is 128 different presets that you can load into a project at one time. It doesn't mean that you can only have 128 different sounds, because you can go back and change these individually with these parameters at any point in time, but you can utilize those presets and kind of have them in your back pocket if you wanted to change a step. So for example, we've got this sound right here, and if I wanted to change one of those sounds into, say, some kind of percussion, well, now check this out. All of these are hi-hats. We're still on track 4, but this sound should be different and this sound should be different. And I think earlier I changed another one of these sounds, but check this out now. Isn't that neat? This is one of my favorite things about this, because it means that we're not just limited to, like, yeah, okay, we're limited to 12 tracks, but we're limited to like so many more sounds that we can change. And the other cool thing about this as well is that if you do change the sound pool here, and I'm holding this step, then this can actually have its own individual parameter locking as well. So this is where I think the Syntakt really shines, because it allows you to have an incredibly wide range of sounds with very fast access in order to like get a really large amount of diversity that's all bound by the rhythmic pattern. And that's where this starts, and I think that is what the electron sequencer workflow entails too. So I know that I talked about making sounds and changing the poles and stuff, but how do you actually do that? Let's go into function and sound, just like this. We need to go into our sound manager here and hit OK. And then now what this is going to do is it's going to pull up all of our presets. You can jump pages if you want by holding function to kind of yeet through this. And then all you have to do whenever you hold this kind of stuff is just go yes, 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 yes. Yes, 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 yes. And then once you have that, hit right, and you're going to go to copy to. I think it's going to be a little bit different per electron box, but for this one, it's copy to, hit yes. You're going to see that it says sound pull, hit yes. Yay. So now we'll go no, 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 no. Hop out of this. We're going to hit 4, change this, and you'll see that all of these sounds are available for us to mangle and dangle. Yay. Pretty neat, right? So the other thing that I kind of wanted to talk about within this, because once you have this kind of thing of like approaching rhythm and whatnot, the next thing is timbre. You have a lot of LFOs, contrary to like the limitation that this has. If you're on digital, you've got 2 filters, 2 LFOs. If you're on analog, you've got 1 filter and 2 LFOs. And then your effects also have built-in LFOs as well, which is super sick. So because of that, if we had something, say, kind of like this sound, you'll notice that it's kind of clicking and stuff. That's just coming from Bitwig. I think it's a software issue, so I apologize about that. But if we come into the filter here, you'll see that we have filter 1, 2. Then if we hold this, we've got this other stuff that we can also use as well. Also on the amp here, there's different options, and behind, sorry, we want to hold this one so that we can go to that second filter. There we go. So the digital has up to 2, and you can modulate and automate this. If you're on an analog track, then you've got 1 filter, and then you can change some of the stuff on here to change the delay or change the envelope reset and XYZ. So because of that though, it's pretty sick, because let's say we're doing something digitally. Let's say, I don't know, let's automate the chord. Then we can set one destination to change the filter frequency, and then we hit the depth. We're probably gonna have to go into filter here and turn that down a bit. Let's go ahead and move this up. You've got an LFO, or sorry, an envelope. There we go. And then what's cool is we have another LFO built into this that we can actually go into and find what would be called the bass, I believe. So it would be amp, release time, send, pan. There it is, filter bass. And what this is the second filter here, which would be this guy. And you can set something like this to create a bandpass if you want to. Unfortunately, it can only be a low pass, high pass, or bandpass, so there's no notch included, but bandpasses are great for bass sounds anyways. But because of that, if we go back into our LFO now, we can go to the second one, turn on the depth, turn on the speed, and utilize both filters for this track. But what's sick is that there's actually a third LFO and a third filter that you can use via the effects. So if we go to the effects routing here, you'll see that we've got our block. And so what I'm going to do is I'm not going to send 11 in, but instead 6. I believe it's 6. And we are going to go into the effects now. And now that this is yellow, we can see that we've got all these different options here. We'll talk about this in just a second. But within this filter, you can see that we've got a notch going on. So this also has an envelope that's built into it as well. If we type in this, then we can change the delay time of when that's supposed to work and whatnot as well. But we also have 2 more LFOs that we can assign to the effects block. So that's a lot of modulation. It's not perfect, but what is kind of cool is that if you're trying to like utilize a smooth random or something, Say I wanted to randomize this, you can see that that's going to be in step mode. But what I can do is I can go into the other LFO now. Actually, I think that LFO 1 needs to be the random, and then LFO 2 can just be something like a triangle or a saw or anything else that you want. Then we can go to the destination, go to LFO 1 speed, and what that's going to do is essentially create a smooth random out of this. I can't show you because there's no waveform that will track it, but I've done it with the analog heat whenever I make neural bases inside of that. Trust me, it works. It's not a true smooth random, but it does work, and so that could be something that could be helpful to you. So finally, I want to talk about sidechaining, which is pretty easy to set up. What we want to do here is go into our routing now, and we want to omit everything, or sorry, we just want to omit the kick and snare. So let's say this is our kick and snare. We want that to be off. Everything else can be included with this, say blah, 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 doesn't matter. Now what we want to do is we want to go to our amp here, and we want to utilize this guy, because what's going to happen is we can create a envelope shape in order to sidechain. Some other videos categorize this as pseudo sidechain compression, and I think that's a really confusing term. What I would suggest is just, let's call it FL sidechaining, because that's really where it was most common back in the day, where people would just create these automation lanes of volume shaping, and that's what this will do. But the problem though is that even though this is turned on within the envelope here, it's not working. So what you have to do is you actually have to set a step on this in order for this to go. Because what's going to happen is if we go into, sorry, I'm going to come out of the effects here and just type this in. You have to have it sequenced, and then you also have to come into the effects and tell that where to sequence. Otherwise, it's not going to work. But once you have that, you see how duct and volume became a lot more quiet. And that was only on everything that was, well, I guess it was everything, because that was, we don't have a kick or snare in there. But the reason why this is important is because if you're trying to create a step where the kick is or something, you would actually place it over that kick. So if I'm going into something like, you know, kick, 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 or something like that, let's just pretend, then what I can do is go back into the effects here and set this up and go kick, 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 kick. I think that's a little bit different, but we're going to basically place it wherever that kick and or snare would be. And that's how you can create your volume sidechaining. So with that, there's a lot of stuff that you can jump into. I think that this is a lot of fun, and even though I'm not really expecting to make the most awesome music with this, as a means of actually composing with it, there are quite a few sound design things that will at least get you started. I think that's the best way to describe it. You can make a respace in this. It's very easy. You can make really hard-hitting drums, and I like that I can do all this independently very fast without having to, pull up a bunch of plugins or anything else like that of the sort. So I don't know, I really enjoy this. I guess one other thing that I didn't talk about much is if you wanted to record live, you can just hit record and play at the same time. That will allow you to either, or if you want to go into your keyboard mode, you hold this, set your keys in the way that you want to, where you can change the chord mode, and then you can set your root note or whatever. And then you can hold both of these and start playing this live if you want to, which I guess will bring me to the last point that I think will be very basic but really important as well. Let's say you have a trigger on this, right? And you want to change the notes here without actually doing the live recording. Hold a step, go to trigger, and change the notes here, and that will allow you to figure out what note needs to go into this. I think that's a really important thing, because sometimes I don't want to play live, and sometimes I really am not into trying to make this, like a live performance thing. I really just want to be like a robot and just kind of plug in the notes or plug in the progression in the way that I want to. Sometimes just doing it this way is a little bit more efficient, especially if you're not doing a complicated bass line. But you can always go back into that. Again, sync and keyboard, hold it, and then this will pull this up. You can also change this over if you just want to be able to not be able to play any wrong notes. And there you go. So with that out of the way, hopefully that was helpful to you. We talked about how to get rhythm in here. We talked about how to diversify the sounds. We talked about the individual sound design, and we talked about some LFO tricks that I thought were pretty excuse me, awesome for doing creative sound shaping. But other than that, I think that now it's really just up to us to jump into this thing and start making some tunes and have some fun. If y'all have any questions, then let me know. I'm not claiming to be an expert on the Syntakt. I'm not claiming to, you know, just be like, yeah, I'm a guru. I literally got this thing a week ago, but it kind of tells how easy it is to learn based off of what I figured out with the thing since day 2. So with that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope that this was super informative. And yeah, let me know if you all have any tricks and stuff as well, because I'm curious to know. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.